Call to order City of Port Richey City Council meeting Tuesday, July 23rd, 2024. I'd like to invite Servant Leader Fields for the invocation and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Okay. Father, we just come to you and we thank you we could bring all these petitions to you. We ask for wisdom and guidance for the stuff that's on the agenda tonight, for the council and the board members, and for the election in November. We thank you for unity and for the people being able to vote and put people in position that has the best for the city. And also for the surplus, we thank you that we'll be able to actually get rid of that stuff and make money. And we have the outdoor storage sheds. We'll address that too, as well as planning for zoning and for the other stuff on the agenda and old business. So I just want to thank you for giving us wisdom, putting us together as a team for the best for the city as we do the Pledge of Allegiance. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, have roll, please.
Mayor John Aaron Hoover.
Here.
Vice Mayor Linda Rodriguez.
Here.
Councilman David Mueller.
Here.
Councilman Robert Hubbard.
Here.
Councilwoman Lisa Burke.
Here.
City Attorney Nancy Meyer. Here. City Manager Matthew Koppler.
Here. Thank you. First up, item number one, we got council minutes from 6/11 for a motion and our discussion.
Motion to approve council minutes from 6/11/24.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Bob, had second. So motion second for discussion. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next up is comments from the general public. I have one signed up, Danny Fields. Welcome.
My name's Danny Fields. My address is 8114 Leo Kid. And again, I just want to thank you for your servant leadership and working together as a team. I do got a couple of things I want to address. Tomorrow at Light of the World Tabernacle at 8114 Leo Kid Avenue, we're going to be doing a backpack stuffing party from 12 to 2. And we bought all this stuff and had businesses and stuff come together to be able to give back to the schools. And then we'll be doing that event in Waterfront Park, which we got the flyer, and it says, come and join us on the 27th, next week, this Saturday, and we'll be giving them out at 10, 11, and 12, so we'll be there from 8 to 2. We got a permit for that as well. There's going to be over 400 backpacks, and I know the police usually are there and the fire department, and we set up and we feed and work in the community for the better for each other and get to know one another. It's a great chance for you, if you can, to be there, to do PR, to be able to talk to the people and build a relationship with those that actually elected you, and also, that it's got a voice to be heard. And for my sake, I want to also share on that. So for those who would be watching, that's going to be at 8119 Old Post Road in Port Richey, Florida, at Waterfront Park. So you could register online through Somebody Cares at Jerry's, and I'll give that location in case somebody still wants to do that. And it's called Good News Christian Fellowship, 9215 Little Road, Newport Richey, and the zip air is 34654. I've got to do a lot of things. We're going to be doing also tomorrow at that time, instead of from 12 to 2, from 4 to about 5 or 5:30, we're going to be doing a celebration of life for EMT. And it was good. I mean, he passed away, so we're going to be there. We hosted this for him. We didn't charge them for that because we want to be able to pour back into those that serve us. There's going to be a parade going down 19. The chief of police will be leading them in that. Fire department will be there as well, working together with Dobie Funeral and us giving that part to open our facilities for them. So that's what Somebody Cares is about, working together for the best for the people. And we're getting a lot more doors opening, And I'm stepping into more arenas in that arena to work with the faith-based church and government working together. So I just want to thank you again. I know I give you a lot of 3 different things in a few minutes, but again, blessings in Jesus' name, and thank you.
Thanks, Danny. That's all the signups I have. By show of hands, anyone else like to speak? This is general. If you, I guess you signed up, I think, later. But if you anything general, okay, bring it back. Next up is comments from the city manager. Pass to Mr. Cropper for his comments.
Good evening, and thank you. Just had a few, some quick updates here. First, the solar radar speed signs have finally been delivered. Staff will begin the sighting process, and we'll go out and mark where we believe those need to go, and we'll let you know once we have it marked, so you can go out and take a look at them, see if there's any issues with that. And a few days after that, if you haven't responded back with issues, we'll get them installed and get them up and operational. Burns McDonald, the engineering firm conducting the Grand Boulevard US 19 intersection safety improvement design, aka golf cart crossing, indicated they are now 50% complete with design. They expect to provide us with a preliminary plan for review and comment by next week. And again, if there's anything dramatic there, we'll make sure you're aware of it. Ajax has completed this year's pavement program, is now working with our staff to address the punch list items. Coming days, staff will be touring the city, looking at all those sites where we've done road work and make sure it's up to the standards that we would expect it to have. We've successfully completed the search for the vacant finance director position. Adam Thompson has agreed to become the city's next finance director. Mr. Thompson most recently served as the Director of Finance and Administration for the St. Louis Job Corps in Missouri. Before that, he was City Administrator for Burns Mills, Missouri, and prior to that, he was actually in Florida, working as City Manager for Bowling Green, Florida, and worked for Polk County School Board as their Senior Coordinator for Finance and Federal Programs. Mr. Thompson will begin work with us on August 5th, which is late for me, but close enough.
Better late than never.
Yes. I'm doing a lot of budget entry right now. Recently met with representatives from Pasco County Public Works and the engineering firm that is doing the update to their stormwater master plan. The purpose of the meeting was to gather information regarding the county's ownership and maintenance responsibilities for the canals on Old Post Road that lead into the bayou, and discuss how we can collaborate on addressing canal-related issues. Additionally, we aim to understand the master plan update that they're doing, identify potential future stormwater infrastructure projects that impact the city. While we received a few answers, the process is still moving forward on the plan, but it's very early stages, so we didn't get a lot of questions answered, unfortunately. But we have agreed that we'll work with them on the planning process, so the final results hopefully will be favorable for us, and maybe there'll be some collaboration on different stormwater projects between the two of us. And lastly, met recently with the owner of Spin Nation Skating Center. The owner is interested in annexing their facility into the city of Port Richey. In the next few days, I'll be providing some follow-up information to the owner, hopefully to facilitate a decision whether they wish to come into the city or not. And that's all I have. If there's any questions.
Okay. I'll start with my right, Councilman Hubbard.
Nothing at this time.
Okay. Councilman Mueller.
A couple items. You mentioned you met with the county on those canals. Did they indicate that they're the owners of those canals, or do you guys have any discussion in that regard?
Well, that is so. We had a pretty good understanding that they did own those, because if you go to the Pasco mapper, it shows their ownership.
Right.
They actually provided deeds to us today.
Okay.
So 3 of the canals, so all but the canal north of Quist, they own. That one north of Quist is actually owned by the Florida Sheriff's Foundation.
on the north side
Yeah.
between Quist and Bay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
So that was kind of interesting
That is.
because again, if you look at the Mapper program, it says it's owned by the county, but that deed says it's owned by the Florida Sheriff Foundation.
Us. It is. It's a mess.
Which I don't exactly understand that being deeded over to them. I mean, it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But,
Maybe the Florida Sheriff's Boys Ranch we're going to work.
but you know,
Yeah.
the big answer or the big question that we want to get answered is what is their responsibility of maintenance of that? And
Right.
and until we get a good understanding of that, is a little bit difficult for us to put in plans together because
Yeah.
you know, now that we know that they do own it, they do have some
Responsible.
regency over, you know, what happens in those canals, and may or may not be an issue, you know, doing work in the future.
With regard to that, I know that pipe is still got some obstruction in there. I know Daryl was looking into getting that done. It's a time frame, but I just didn't know that was going to happen soon.
Don't have an update on that.
The attorney was looking into ability to retain vehicles on the impound lot. Is there any updates on that?
No, sir, there's not. I will
Okay.
put
Okay.
that back on my list. I'm sorry it fell off.
That's
Forgot
fine.
about that.
I got my list.
That's good. That's
Checking
what I
it
need.
twice. Also, have we spoke to the waterfront business owners in regard to development down there? We were going to get some of their input to determine what their requirements or needs or wishes or opinions are.
Yeah. So the short answer is no,
Okay.
but the longer answer is that is the next phase of the whole Imagine Cody River landing project we're doing. We are in the process of getting the statement of work from the planning company on that. And they have gotten they provided to me, which I provided to the Comprehensive Land Use Plan Committee for their review. There were maybe some changes, updates to that. So she is redoing the statement of work. In the meantime, we got dropped the application for text amendment and the future land use map changes. So we kind of shuffled resources to start dealing with that. So
Gotcha.
waiting to get the statement of work. Once we have statement of work, we have to come back to council to get the approval to spend it because it is a little bit of a large expenditure.
But you indicated you thought we might be able to utilize some grant funding or
Yeah, and so
possibly
that's-
ARPA or
That's
something. Yeah.
well, I think there's always that potential. We have applied to the state for a planning grant, and I think we should be hearing back from that sometime in August. I think is what it. The term is end of summer, so I don't know exactly what the end of summer is. But that's when we should hear back on whether that's been awarded. And that is a very large component that makes a lot of this feasible.
Thank you. Also, do we have any updates on the speed bumps on Grand?
So we are in the process still trying to get the county meeting scheduled to go over what they're going to require. I mean, I think everyone we keep asking that question to at the county says it's their road. And we're going to have to conform to whatever they
Sure.
say. So we're trying to get that meeting set up.
Right. And a couple meetings ago, there was a mention about a Pier Road and Sunset speed bump that was needing repaired. And is that on anybody's agenda?
From who?
Yes, Daryl from Public Works Utilities is looking into that to see if either we'll be taking it out or repairing it.
Gotcha. Also, I guess this was my last one. Has there been any calls made to the state about demolition of the pier, them absorbing that?
No, I have not done that.
Thank you.
Council Lindbergh.
Just a couple of things. I had someone ask me about when you put in a service request online, and it goes through different things. Once it's a waiting schedule, how long does that take? I'm sure that depends on what it is, but because it just says a waiting schedule, is there some kind of update to that?
So,
That's what I got asked.
my quick answer is
Nope.
I don't know. But I see Sal's writing something down. I don't know if he has an answer to that. Or he's trying to look busy, so I wouldn't ask.
I was just writing down.
He's writing his grocery list.
Well, it all depends on the item. It all depends on who's attending to that specific request. So they would either update it or inform Ashley or I about the status of that, so then we can update the portal. So either way, it's either going to be us updating or the person that's in, if it's a public works request, waiting for them to either do the task or put it on their schedule to do that. But the portal doesn't have like a date and time to put it on there.
Right. Yeah. Because I went back and I looked and I saw there were some things waiting scheduled from like the first of this month, but like you said, it depends on what it is. But there is just no other. It's just there.
Do you guys have
Waiting schedules.
do you guys have like a service level agreement or some kind of metric that you want to say once somebody inputs, you touch it within so many days and get it scheduled or something like that? You got any goals to do something like that?
Not at this time, no. But once again, it would all depend on the priority of what the item is and when it's scheduled to do so. I mean, of course, if it's an emergency item, safety item, it's going to be addressed immediately. But if it's cosmetic or just something that was noticed, like if there's a piece of furniture left on the street for them to collect, I mean, they'll just schedule that accordingly. If it's a small pothole or something like that, they'll put that on their paving schedule when they go ahead and accumulate X amount of potholes so they can knock them all out at the same time. So it all depends on the situation, but we don't have like a time matrix on when that's going to be done because each department head, it varies on their availability and their staff availability.
Yeah, thanks for mentioning the furniture limit. It's got furniture dumped on there, so add that to your list.
Right. That's like what I called in earlier in the week about the dock at Next Park was missing a board, and that was deemed more of an emergency for that to be fixed. So
Was there a specific on which item it was that was waiting?
no, it was just what's
Okay.
it gets sent in, and then the next thing is awaiting scheduling, and then there's nothing else. It just so I didn't know how long that took, or if it would pop up something. I didn't know the answer to that,
Gotcha.
so
Okay.
I was hoping somebody would. Okay.
If I could add to that, is there like an aging report that you guys are monitoring? So let's say you get a bunch of stuff out there that's a waiting schedule when it's not been picked up. Is there some kind of aging report that says, hey, this has been out there for 2 weeks without being touched?
It does show how long the work order has been.
Yeah, it has a date for when the work order was created and how much time
Has
on that
elapsed.
particular item. And we do follow up if it's been either I, myself, or Ashley, since we monitor the portal and create that service order request to that particular department. We'll follow up with them if something is lagging on, like has anything changed. So we don't, but sometimes internally, Public Works will say, yes, we're getting to that, or nothing has changed yet, but we're getting on, and they're still aware of it. So unfortunately, there's not like sub selections to say, yes, I talked to Daryl. There's no selections like that. It's like, so we just keep it on that awaiting schedule status until something new has been done.
Right, like under code complaints, it'll have notes. I guess that's what that's missing is
Yeah.
notes. Because on the code stuff, it has notes, so you actually know.
Are they assigned to an
They're assigned per
Department.
Yeah, per department. I mean, the building and the development services has their own portal, of course, and they handle all their stuff either by the code enforcer, building official, or staff related. And our citizen request is usually Public Works, utilities.
So when it's awaiting scheduling, it's already been assigned to a department? Is that Did it show that somewhere? At least it showed it's made it to the appropriate department, I wonder, in the notes?
It gets assigned
Yeah,
to
it
Public
should-
Works or
It
Utilities.
should show there. It should
Show
show
that.
there.
Yeah.
I'll have to take a look at the portal.
Normally, if
itself.
it's Public Works, I assign it to their supervisor. And then I will send an email to Daryl as well, letting them know that there is a work order in place that they need to address. And especially if it's more of an urgent matter, I definitely address it with him and let him know if he needs to follow up with the requester. But I put it in and let them know every time I put, at least the ones that I put in, I know Sal has followed up too with the ones that they put in from the request portal.
So once it goes to the department it's supposed to, which is fine, right, the
They
department
can move
director,
it through. They can move it through to open.
is it their procedure, the director's procedure to assign it to an individual employee to work then, or?
Yeah, either they'll assign it to an individual employee or a group of employees, all depending on what the task is. How many people they
I
accomplish.
guess what would be the expectation when let's say a resident puts an issue in, pothole on Grand, and it goes to Public Works and it's assigned to Daryl, it's awaiting scheduling. And that person goes out to check their status, it says awaiting scheduling. What would be, ideally, who should they call to follow up on it if it's been, say, a couple weeks?
They can call us directly. They can call us to follow up with them, or they can call Public Works directly and find out what the status of that is. So,
Do they see in there that it's assigned to, like, Daryl in Public Works?
I don't know.
Department only, I
Yeah,
believe.
department only. Yeah. So, but we can either update the website or blog something about the portal.
Yeah,
To
I mean, it
an-
might be nice to actually, if he knows who might work it, to go ahead and, I don't know how the hell they do their work queues or whatever, and or if Daryl just doesn't assign it until it's ready to be worked.
We can add it as a note as well.
Yeah.
So if anything, we can put a note on contact so and so and leave their phone number.
Yeah.
So
That might help.
we can start doing that as opposed to like
That's new. It's new anyway.
Yeah.
That whole thing is new. So
in case
people
there's any
ask
questions on it, we can start doing that and put their the contact name and phone number for any questions. Maybe and then that way the person looking at the portal will just call them directly and say,
Yeah.
I've had this up for about a week or two. What's the status of that? Is it changed? Is it going to get done, or when is it going to get done? So I think if we put those on the notes, everyone that used the portal will see that and know the point of contact that they can call.
And then they probably get answered. They call Daryl and says, "Oh yeah, we've it's planned for next week or something."
Yeah.
One other question. Do you have the ability to add files or attach photos like you do with the permit system in there? Because that's a feature that's not turned on.
Yes, we have that. We have that feature.
Um,
So you mean like a picture of the actual site?
it might help the person identify the problem easy. I'm just thinking out loud.
I don't. I mean, if the person who submits the request or email takes the picture and attaches it, then we can attach that picture to the work order, and then they'll see that when they open the work order, they'll see the photo.
But I mean,
Yeah, I don't think they can.
in the permit system, I can attach. I go and fill out the form. I can attach all the documents, the survey, things like that. It's the same system I work, so I would think that feature would be available. Just probably need to click a box.
Yeah, let me look into that
Yeah.
and see if that's possible. But and it's very similar, so I'm sure if it's either not selected now, it can be selected later. Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh.
Yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Vice Mayor
Right
Rodriguez.
now, thank you.
Okay, come back to me. On the paving, I've drove all the streets, look really good. There's a couple of issues here and there, but it's been a long time coming. We approved that, I think, back in February. So it's finally good to see that come to fruition. I'm sure the residents are happy. I know coming in where I live off of Bay down on Green, coming off 19 on the Bay and into the Walmart there is a huge difference. So that's really good that we got that done.
If you,
Sure.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but whatever issues you may have, can you forward them to city manager?
Yeah, I have. Yeah, all right.
Because we're going to be doing a walkthrough very soon about the completion of it. So if there's anything that we need them to do
Mhm.
beforehand, we want to make sure that they take care
Yep,
of it.
absolutely. The going back up to the dumping on Lemon, I was going to bring that up too. There's been 2 or 3 times that I'd reached out, the resident reached out about dumping there. City removed it. And of course, it just keeps coming. Obviously, as stuff's not removed, it starts to grow. So, it seems like that's a normal occurrence. Like that's 2 or 3 times that there's actually 2 sofas sitting out there now. I don't believe there's a no dumping sign. I don't know that would necessarily help, but if we were able to put one there, it might make people think twice. Maybe they're watching, maybe they're not. But at least if there's a sign there, it might help. I don't know. But The other part I was going to ask is, it would be nice to catch whoever's doing this. I'm sure it's probably multiple people, but I don't know if there's any kind of capability, cameras, solar cameras. Does the police department have any kind of ability to do surveillance?
About a game camera.
Field camera.
Or something like that, yeah.
Mr. Alexander and I have talked about this before, and he's placed a couple of game cameras out there. Unfortunately, one of them was stolen, so it didn't capture anybody. So it's an option that we can look into once again, but I think we also need the signage up. I know there's signage west of Olsner. I don't believe there's any east of Olsner on limit.
How much those cameras cost?
I think I gave like $80 a piece for the ones that I had.
Okay. Is that a felony if someone steals city property, or that's a misdemeanor, I guess, right?
It's $1,000.
Misdemeanor. Okay. Can you put a camera to look at the camera? Would you buy the camera? I mean, seriously.
I like
Is that what it takes?
I'm sure we could.
Get a camera to watch that camera.
Hey,
Steals the camera.
hey,
So under $80, find out who's doing this and find
Yes.
them.
You know, Home Depot sells the ladders.
All right. So if we can somehow try to mitigate that best we can, obviously it's a recurring problem.
Yes, and I think if we can get the signage up and in coordination with the game cameras, we can try to put it into that.
And on the other side of that, if we could be somewhat proactive and I don't know what staff or code enforcement, somebody drives on there, if they see that, because that couch, this particular one's been there at least a couple of weeks. If we can be proactive and as soon as we see something there, get rid of it so it doesn't attract us.
Citizens as well.
Sure, they put it in,
Absolutely.
and that's how I heard about it. But the city drives around all the time. There's no reason we can't.
Everybody carries a camera with them now.
Let's see. On the other side of the, not the dumping, but the woods, there's also been some concerns about homeless in the woods. And I know those are private property. I guess from a policing standpoint, the owner of the property would have to call in and complain about it for you guys to be able to go on property to find that.
They have to authorize us with a trespass warning in order for us to take action against anyone on that property.
If you guys are made aware that, let's say there's a homeless camp in there, because people that live over in that area or by it see them coming out, also without the permission, can you guys reach out to the property owner to make them aware there's been a complaint? Do you have access to go on and try to be proactive and get in there and clear that up? If you,
Yes. We do have quite a few trespass authorizations from different locations. We've actually stalked them out because of the homeless population. So there's a number that we do have on file already.
Next, over the past weekend during scout season, I know we tried to get, and we had a low tide, kind of middle of the day, so we couldn't launch the boat off there. I noticed that the lift only goes down so far because it hits the ground there on the, let's see, it'd be the southeast corner,
side, yeah.
southeast corner, right there by the. So if you want to get on the boat from the dock, that first piling right there is the lowest spot, and so once the cradle hits there, it can't go down any lower. I mentioned to Matt, I know that Daryl was aware of it. Did he have an update on that? I know he's going to try to get somebody out there. Okay. So obviously, we need to make sure that we can launch that boat at any tide. So I think we need to make sure that that's dug out a little bit there to get that cradle down. I noticed that the cable itself, when they did get it out, there wasn't a whole lot of cable left, maybe 2 more turns. So I don't know if the cable's the right size or not, but if we could kind of look at the lift and see if there's any way to make sure that that's at any, even the lowest tide. I think during the winter we have some negative 1.5s, I think, maybe. We make sure that boat can get out at any tide.
We had, once we got the new boat, we had the lift modified in order to take the deeper hole in the boat. So that might be the reason why there's just that little bit of slack left in there. But it's been a recurring problem even before I got here in regards to trying to get the boat out.
It's a little shallow.
We tried all weekend. We did get out once. But every time we try to get it out, it's just too shallow.
I know that he was going to try to dig that out. And of course, during this time, the low tide is kind of like moved to, it's a really low tide, but it's moved to the, it's getting to the point of where it's just turning at dusk. So
That's common around the city. You back your boat off the lift, all that muck gets shoved up in front of the lift there.
that's a police boat. We need to be able to get that out. So we need to make sure that's.
Yeah.
You might be able to use the Vector truck to suck that stuff out of there.
Yeah. The problem was
Assuming they have the, a long enough hose, and we have a disposal site, and maintenance is allowed. So
yeah. So what do we need to do to kind of make sure you guys get access?
Phil's got an idea.
Not bad. Not bad. No.
Okay. Last thing. Just something. So.
Well, I'm just saying, I would recommend using the multi-use vehicle that we use for stormwater, water and sewer to suck out salt water. In, a $600,000 Vector truck to do that job. I would not recommend that.
well, it's got a stainless tank, and most of the interaction that we have in this city is with salt water.
The tank is not stainless. Not the inside of the tank or the external. Down line is not stainless steel. There's some stainless steel components on it, but not the entire tank.
Let's let staff figure out the best way to deal with
Right.
it. Whatever.
Pressure washers.
shovel and waders. We need to make sure that we're doing that.
Just get a paddle prop.
Okay. Next up is my last thing. So I just wanted to bring this up. So, one of the big things back when I ran for election, people wanted to see events and stuff in the park. And I know that the city at the time, we do the 4th of July, and so there really wasn't any appetite to do any additional events. So that was kind of the impetus that where the Chamber of Commerce comes in to be the arm of the city to kind of do events, and the city would support that. So I just want to make it known that they have it started out as the Port Richey Chamber of Commerce. Now they've changed. Now they're doing business as the Nature Coast Chamber of Commerce, so they've kind of expanded their scope to the entire Nature Coast. But they're starting next month on the second and third Sundays. They're going to have on the second Sunday of the month, they're going to have a artisan market. I think it goes from 9 to 3 is the time frame every second Sunday of the month, and then on the third Sunday of the month, they're going to have a community farmers market. So, 2 good opportunities, events in the park to get out, and so let residents know to also get out there, check it. It's Waterfront Park is an event. It's put on by the chamber, and I think they're going to have police and fire booths there that you guys are going to be out there. I don't know if you've heard about it or not, but I know they were going to reach out and reserve some space so you guys can show cars, trucks off, or whatever. But opportunity for the residents to get out and enjoy the park and some events, and that's going to be for the foreseeable future. They originally talked about doing it, I think, just at the last portion of the year, but I think they're going to do it year round. So, and that's all I have. Next up is comments from the boards, committees. Any comments from the board members? And I know we've got a couple of agenda items to appoint, so we'll handle that then. And going on the consent agenda. Need a motion for the consent agenda.
I got a question.
Sure.
On that third item about the public risk management health insurance, 724 looks like a payment of $65K, remaining budget of 0. Do we have any remaining obligations relative to that? I'm wondering if is this the last payment in the series?
I don't think that's a 0. I think it's unknown, right?
Yeah, I understand that these normally were prepared by the finance director.
I got it.
So I think
that's fine.
yeah.
I'm just wondering.
I just have to look into that to verify
That's
that.
no big deal. Also, I know you're working through the process. Is there an opportunity for us to join with Pasco or the state for health insurance and maybe get some better rates? Something to think about. That's it.
The motion?
Motion to approve consent agenda?
Second.
A motion second. Further discussion? Any public comment? Seeing none, I'll bring it back. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, next up, I need to open a public hearing for item number 3. So I'm opening a public hearing, second reading of ordinance number 24-702, calling for a special election on November 5th, 2024 to fill a vacancy on the city council. I will pass it to Ms. Meyer to read.
Ordinance number 24-702, an ordinance of the city of Port Richey, Florida, calling for a special election on November 5th, 2024, for the purpose of filling a vacancy of the city council, identifying that the November 5th, 2024 special election will be conducted by Pasco County Supervisor of Elections, providing for repeal of ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith to the extent of such conflict, and providing for an effective date.
Thank you. With that, I'll open up public comment. I don't have any sign-ups for this particular item. Is there anyone in public like to speak? See no hands, I'll bring it back and we'll close the public hearing and move to the council for a motion and or discussion.
Motion to approve ordinance number 24-702, special election.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I will now open the second public hearing for item number 4, second reading of ordinance number 24-703, add section 2.308, surplus property. I'll pass that to Ms. Meyer for her reading.
Thank you. Ordinance number 24-703, an ordinance of the city of Port Richey, Florida, amending chapter 2, article 5, division 1 of the city of Port Richey Code of Ordinances to add section 2.308, surplus property, providing for severability, providing for codification, and providing for an effective date.
Thank you. I have no signups on this one as well, but I will go to the crowd. Anybody like to speak on this one? Okay, I will close the public hearing and bring it back to council for a motion and or discussion.
Motion to approve second reading ordinance number 24-703 for surplus property.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next up, council business, item number 5, first reading of ordinance number 24-707, amending chapter 127, article 3, section 127-56 to allow for outdoor storage. I will pass that to Ms. Meyer for the reading.
Ordinance number 24-707, an ordinance of the city of Port Richey, Florida, amending chapter 127, article 3, section 127-56 of the Port Richey Code of Ordinances to allow for outdoor storage, providing a definition of outdoor storage, providing for severability, providing for codification, and providing for an effective date.
I can pass that back to Matt for some introduction. Go.
Real quick, as council is aware, we've discussed this item a few different times. Eventually, council had kind of honed on to the desire to have outdoor storage in C3 zoning districts. We took the definition that we had presented and gave it to the Planning Commission or Planning and Zoning Board for their review and comments. I know they spent a little bit of time talking through that and then recommended the language you see today as part of the ordinance.
Okay, so I'll open up to motion and or discussion. I do have some discussion on it, but I can hold off.
Well, yeah, I've thought about this quite a bit, and I know we're trying to clean up our aesthetics here in the city. So therefore, we need to have storage area for people because we don't want our citizens to have RVs and trailers parked in their property, in some properties, especially in some of the residential areas. So they need to have a place to put these trailers and RVs. So it would be nice if they had a place within the city limits and have to go to the county or some other place to spend money to keep them. At the same time, trying to clean up the aesthetics of the city, we want to have, there's not very many places that aren't adjacent to residential areas. So working that out, I do believe that we can allow storage facilities next to residential areas if it's like a buffer zone where you have vinyl protecting 6-foot fence, whether it's composite or chain link. You have to have a high mill vinyl wrap around it. 50% of that covered by shrubs on the property or where the property is adjacent to residential, and the front of the building needs to conform similar to the surrounding businesses or residential area, so it's not that visible. And all of the vehicles or RVs or trailers in there need to have tires on all the axles full of air, and of course the registrations need to be current. So that being said, I think it's something we should be able to close on tonight.
Anybody else have any comments?
Yeah, I do. I went and looked, pulled 15, 16 properties that exist today with a C3 with open storage ongoing today, right? And this thing has evolved because, interpretation and maybe the language wasn't clear or whatever. The point being is, here we are in a situation where we do have a shortage of storage. We're looking for opportunities like that. One of the biggest items that surfaces in the code enforcement is trailers parked in driveways. So we need a solution, right? And Bob was on it as well. But my concern is, by having C3 come up with this additional item of use, that could put us in a very precarious position with property along 19, property in the waterfront district. It opens the door for some things that we may not want in certain areas. So my dilemma is, how do we restrict this in a way that basically encourage any future C3 zoning and restrict it to areas that we deem appropriate, as opposed to open it up for all the C3 zoning? For example, the Guild Dog property on 19, the old trailer park, that is a C3 zoning. Right now, you can put a warehouse and general storage establishment that was defined as a structure, right? But if we were to change this, that would allow somebody to put a storage yard in. And I'm not necessarily good with that. Same thing goes with the property, the marijuana property, which is directly south of them, and the Thai restaurant. At some point in time, things change. People have a vision, and things may change, and they might scrape that off, and now you can actually would be able to put a storage yard in there. And there's some other properties within the waterfront district that would also apply there, as well as things that are on the east side of 19. So my concern is, one, how do we restrict that? And I'm wondering if we maybe run them through the variance process or something to allow somebody to say, hey, that's a good use and fit for that, as opposed to just making it uniform across all C3. And when I look at this, and I'm sure at the time somebody said, hey, we got a boat storage place over there on Pine Hill, or open storage on Siesta. And for that matter, the city even has open storage in our place here. So, and we're zone C3 as well. So anyway, that was then, this is now. How do we move forward and fix this in a way that, hey, we can allow storage, open storage in places that are deemed appropriate? So that's my dilemma.
Any comments from you?
Isn't that sort of like everything that was said for the waterfront district? You can't do certain things there, but you can in other places. Couldn't you?
Well, this is outside of the waterfront district. A couple of those areas that I spoke about are all outside of the waterfront district, right adjacent to it.
Matt, did you have a comment?
Well, yeah,
Right, but I'm saying,
Matt wanted to interject.
I think I was going to say down the lines of what you're talking about. So, I mean, one way is to create some type of special overlay area within C3 that would allow this type of use. So that's one way to do it. I think the problem with making that a special exception is that if your desire is to control only certain places that they could go, there isn't anything for the Board of Adjustment to follow to say that this is okay here but not over there. Right? So if you want to try and restrict it only to certain parts of C3, then the best way to do it is through legislation like this. To say you can do it here, but you can't do it in these areas.
Well, you know, we had this this Imagine coding thing. The three areas that we picked were, you know, east, west, east and west 19, and then the 19 corridor, right? East and west waterfront and 19 corridor. Would that be an appropriate area to prevent open storage? In other words, our most visible parts of the city, you know, where we come in, and if that's going to be a center point or a focal point for the city. I don't know. I'm just throwing ideas out here. I'd like to have some restrictions on it.
Come back to you.
Well, that's basically what he just said. He could make, that could be an overlay over that area.
And not in that area.
Right.
I could,
Sure.
I think, you know, you point out the issue with trying to give people the broadest sense of use of their property. And, you know, in zoning generally, it's all or nothing, right? There are ways to moderate it to a certain degree. But I think, you know, if you're going down that road and want to do it, I really think that we would need to look at all the areas within the city to find out. Let's say you're looking to allow a very intensive use of land, right? Intensive use usually means there's a lot of cars, you know, there's a lot of business, you know, there's a lot of activity, there's a lot of inconvenience is probably going to spread around it. You know, you would do a study of the areas within the city and say, this area here doesn't have a good road system. You know, there's a lot of residential around it, so you don't want that type of intensive use. I'm not saying this is intensive use. I'm just saying that you know, you would need probably to look at areas of the city that you know, don't have residential around it, or whatever that standard that you want to develop. Say it's okay here and not there, because in the end you may have to defend that zoning, and so I don't think it's you know, council saying we think this is where it should be or shouldn't be. I think we need to have, you know, a study behind it shows that there was more thought given to it than just, you know, don't get me wrong, 5 people make a decision is a good thing, but when you go to the court of law, they would like to see why you came up with that decision.
Anything else? Then did you have a comment?
What Dave said is exactly what I said before. If I recall correctly, most of the 19 corridor is C3. So what I said then and what I continue to say is, we have a very small window to impress people in Port Richey and bring them into us. And if the 19 corridor is filled with open storage, you're not going to draw people in. So exactly what Dave is saying is exactly what I said when we discussed this numerous times. We have to have open storage. Not opposed to it, of course, but on the 19 corridor, I think it's not a very pleasing sight. No one's going to drive through that mile stretch and go, let's pull in here in this, between these two storage lots and go see what's down the road. You know, many of you have campaigned on bringing tourism in. Open storage units does not bring storage units in. I'm not going to go up 19 and to the town and decide to make a left off of a road off 19 between two storage units to go see what's down there. So I'm not opposed to open storage, of course not. We need it, absolutely. I have a trailer myself. Not opposed to it. I just don't think the 19 corridor is very pleasing to the eye. So I agree with Dave. I've said it before, and I stand on that.
One other thought. Right now, we have a waterfront district that extends to some of the properties in that area. I don't think it extends all the way to 19, right? Am I right? It goes to Old Post and stops. But the large parcel owned by Eric is outside of the waterfront. Could we expand the waterfront district to include more property or maybe make a larger, cast the net a little larger, because that's the critical area, right? That's where most of the vacant property is. There might be a few along 19. I know there's a lot of little repair shops and stuff going on the east side. And at some point in time, somebody looks at that and has a better idea. Things change, right? So,
Well, I think that at least in talking with our planner and thinking through potentially changes to our zoning code to help encourage redevelopment of the area, we had thought that the expansion of the waterfront overlay district is kind of a natural thing to do. And again, I think we kind of view those decisions from a more process-oriented process, and going through the next step with the Cody River Landing, and actually looking at the other side of 19 as well to see what works well with what we consider waterfront over there.
redevelopment area.
Yeah. And the thinking was that in the end, we'd probably have a broader waterfront overlay district, but we probably would also have a adjacent US 19 zone that you look at and say, well, this isn't waterfront, but redevelopment there could help development in the waterfront. So you're going to want to try to spur certain types of development there that are compatible and make sense with the waterfront overlay district. So we kind of thought about that, but again, that's kind of next steps and a broader issue than this.
As I said in previous meetings, we do have storage areas in residential areas right now, and they've been they look pretty organized, but they're not in, like on 19, or not in high traffic areas. But as I said before, I've traveled around the country and I've seen storage areas. You go by, you have no idea that that's a storage facility. They'll have a nice restaurant and like a bingo hall and a storage area, and it's all like the same building. You can't even tell it's a storage facility. You have a facade out front, it's got painted on windows and shrubs. You can't even tell what it is. You could have it even looking nicer than some of the buildings around it. You have no idea it's a storage facility. So it's possible to do that without hurting any of the industries or the image of the city. If it's done right, then how do you make this person in this area do that way and other people in certain areas do it another way? Apple 6 area down there, that's very good looking commercial property and residential property mixed, but it's pretty organized. You've got a church, you've got a nice office building, you've got an assisted living facility, you have all that. That can be made into a storage facility with a proper facade in the front, protection against the residential area very well, where it would go in with the property around it very well. So, but it's like I said, it's hard to make it. This person has to do it this way, but this person here has to do it another way and has to spend more money than this person. Well, like Dave said, this is something we have to determine, and it's not easy because it's a small city, but I think it can be done, and I think that's what we need to do, because we do need storage facilities. We need competition in storage facilities because a lot of people have a lot of boats in this town and trailers, and they need to park them somewhere. So I think if they have a nice facade for property on main roads, whether it's 19 or if it's Pine Hill or anything else, that would be, if it's done right, I think we should be able to allow that.
So if I could opine here on this, I saved mine to last just because I'm going to share some stuff up here to help facilitate this. So if you look on the screen, you're seeing what I have up here. And so this is the C3 zoning that's in our packet. Okay. And what I want to make sure that we all understand here is that there's several items of accepted uses. The reason that we're having this particular conversation today is because if you see down here on number 22, warehousing and general storage establishment was an accepted use. Now, because we have, did you say 8 to 13 storage in C3? We've got.
I counted 16.
Okay, so it's kind of been an accepted practice that you can have outdoor storage in C3 zoning, and it bases that on a general storage establishment. And when I read this, again, I'm not a building official, I'm just me. When I read this as a person who would go to purchase a property, I would read that as it's purposefully vague. I can store general stuff there. Doesn't need to be in a building. An establishment doesn't necessitate a building. It's a place, right? Building or not, it's a lot that I can just do general storage in. And when I think general storage, I think boats, RVs. I could build a building and put storage units there. It's just general by nature. Okay. And so, and we've kind of operated under that assumption for evidently a long time because we have so many of those in C3. Now, I want to also point out that there's a lot of uses here that we wouldn't want to see a proliferation of across 19. For example, something very similar, commercial parking lots. So let's say that we get uber focused on outdoor storage yards and we make them all these special rules and only location, whatever. But in reality, C3, we could have all commercial parking lots along there as well. It's perfectly fine, right? So same thing on automobile service station. We could have gas stations running up all down there. So what I'm trying to point out here is that whatever use that you have in a particular zone, technically it could proliferate across all areas with that particular zoning. But business is going to come in and buyers are going to come in, and would we have all? I want to bring it back to when we talked about the jet ski rentals or watercraft rentals at waterfront. Could you have jet ski rentals encompassing the entire waterfront? Technically, yes, right? But that's, again, not a great business model. You wouldn't open a Krispy Kreme right next to a Krispy Kreme. And so, obviously, boat storage is somewhat prevalent in the city because of a couple reasons. We are a boating community, and people need places to store their boats right here on the water. So that's a good use for those type of properties, right? And so because we have rules in place that prohibit other developments, that is the highest best use of those properties in the current state, and so that's what they end up being. If we really want to plan how we want the city to look and we want different things, we need to be more development friendly in areas, density and all that, which obviously we're going to talk about coming up. If we do those things, we start to encourage different things, and these lots that are sitting empty or that they've got boat and RV stories, they sell and something replaces them that's a better high and best use of that property. So, but the reality is I find it very difficult to restrict something that we've allowed, and we're really just clarifying what general storage is to include that. But there's a lot of things in here, and C3 from a zoning perspective, that's like the cream de la cream of commercial property. It's the most unrestrictive. You can do pretty much anything you want with it. And those properties are valuable because you can do pretty much anything with them. And people, when they buy them, they want to have the flexibility. So, obviously, I myself, as well as you all, don't want entire 19 to be boat and RV storage. And it's not that way now. Matter of fact, there's only one, I think, on 19, two maybe. They're all really, and I was going to actually share this here because I wanted to go a little bit further in it. So, need to be careful what we take away from the zoning, because again, we set a precedent here that we've allowed it, and really all we're doing is kind of clarifying that so that there is no interpretation that general storage establishment does not include that, because in the past it has. Okay. The other problem I have with the specific change is item number 23. Is about midway down through the paragraph, and this was copied out of the I-1 zoning. So this is exact replica of what was in I-1, correct? Right. I don't think it's changed at all.
The middle part, from there forward, it's exactly, but the first part's
a little different.
Yes.
Okay. And so specifically, I'm going to read this. The outdoor storage yard shall not be located closer than 25 feet to any public street or closer than 75 feet to any portion of a lot located within a residential district. Any such outdoor storage yard shall be completely enclosed except for necessary ingress and egress by a solid fence or wall not less than 6 feet high. So we have buffering requirements for non-residential zoning that abuts residential zoning. And let me go over to that now. So in section 127-95 are buffer requirements. And so, and I'll just read this, where the rear or side property line of a lot developed or proposed to be developed for non-residential use within a residential district, or where the rear or side property line of a lot developed or proposed to be developed for non-residential use adjoins a residential zoning district, residentially developed area, or public street adjoining any residential district or residentially developed area suitable, buffering in the form of a solid fence, masonry wall, or plant materials shall be provided along the entire length of the property line unless this requirement is waived by the Board of Adjustment upon specific appeal. Said buffering shall be at least 6 feet in height. Fences and masonry walls shall not exceed 8 feet in height. Should a landscape buffer be provided, the plant materials should be of an evergreen variety capable of attaining the required minimum height and shall be properly maintained. No buffering shall extend into an area required for sightline visibility in accordance with provisions of section 127-90. And then it goes on to talk about garbage dumpsters and how it's, so anyway, my point here is that we have buffering set up so that you must have at least a 6-foot solid fence if you abut residential property already. That's baked into any commercial. So whether it's a gas station or whatever the thing, it's going to have a 6-foot minimum fence or appropriate buffering in between there. So going back to the change here, we're actually making that more restrictive because we're saying 25 foot off the road, 75 foot off any property line. Again, I think once you have the appropriate buffering there, I don't know that we need to specify an additional distance, because what that does is it, one, probably puts people out of compliance that are currently doing it now. Most of it, I don't think much abuts residential anyway, but there are some cases where it could. And do we really need to have an additional 75 foot there? Because if it was a commercial parking lot, we're not requiring that 75 feet. If there's any of those other things in there, we're not requiring 75 feet just on just boat and RV stores. So moving a little bit forward to talk about the fencing around it. It mentions a solid fence. One second here. So this is a map of down James Clark Street on the east side of 19. And there's a storage facility right there, Moon Lake, I think it's called. I'm going to go to street view here so you can see it. This is a C3 property right here, Moonlight Bay boat ramp storage. And as you can see, it's got 6-foot fence, not a wall, not it's you can see through it, right? And again, it's C3 abutting C3, and that's how it looks. Okay. I want to flip over to the other side of the street. This here is a residential zoning, and this is a storage area for water ventures. And you can see that they had a chain link fence. The actual property owner put up an additional wood fence along that, but the actual lots on the other side, this right side over here is part of Moon Lake. That's their boat ramp and stuff over there, with a chain fence on the other side. You can see they put some slats in. I don't know if they were required to do that or they just want to do it for some privacy, but you can see those little inserts that they put in the fence. It's not solid. So one concern I have when we talk about solid fence is what constitutes solid fence. This doesn't constitute solid to me, but I could see where somebody could interpret it as it would. And the same thing when we talk about the meshes. Let me give you another example here by City Hall. So here's City Hall. You have this style too, which we got around our police department and they also have it around theirs. Now, the green one we have, you can kind of see through it, right? So is that really solid? I don't know if that applies or not. This one is fairly hard to see through, if at all. But it's around there. And again, I don't know the scenarios on why some have this stuff and some not. Maybe they want it for privacy. I don't know if they were required to put something up there because of the code saying it needs to be solid. But again, in C3, which is this particular parcel is here, it was just general storage establishment. We didn't have any requirements around the fencing and all that. That was carried over from the I-1 industrial. And maybe when that was put in, that was industrial's a little bit different than C3 because industrial's a lot more stuff going on. And if you were in a residential area, you probably wouldn't want that's as close as you would C3. It's a different uses, right? So anyway, I wanted to kind of show some visuals on what we have in the city and what these things are. So it would be my recommendation going back. I think for clarification purposes, we need to have outdoor storage listed here so we comply with what we have in the city now and going forward. And again, I don't want a proliferation of outdoor storage yards, but I don't think it's going to happen by doing this, right? Because there's a lot of things that could proliferate besides just that. So I would recommend that we just modify this to allow outdoor storage yards and take out these additional restrictions. Again, they'd only be applying to outdoor storage yards, nothing else. So I don't want to be restrictive just to be restrictive. If it makes sense, okay, but this might actually cause some of these properties not to be able to operate because they're not within that 75 feet. And I give you other examples to show where it might make something wrong, but I think we need to take that out. It's unnecessary overreach from a property owner's perspective, and I don't necessarily have a problem with the solid fence stuff because that does obscure. But I wanted to point out that if you do have a solid fence, our code enforcement official can't see into it. So if I have a solid 6 foot or even 8 foot fence going around a property where I'm storing stuff, the grass could be overgrown. There could be opportunities for rats and stuff to live or whatever, and he would not be able to say, hey, you need to cut your grass because it's obscured. Whereas if it's open, you can see in there, and if the grass gets too tall, he can enforce that. And so we can, by being able to see through it, we can actually make it look nicer. So that was one thing I wanted to add for just a second. So I'm willing to talk about the solid fence or whatever, but I think I would probably pull all that out. The buffering between residential and commercial is already there with a solid fence, and probably not being adhered to. At least I know at least one spot in the city it isn't. But there's no actual development on it. It's just woods, but it could be developed at some point, and it's just a chain link fence. So anyway, Bob, that question, I'll come back to you.
Well, it was the solid fencing, I think, was only required where it's adjacent to residential.
This requires it around an outdoor storage yard.
And I disagreed. It could be adjacent to residential, so I could see it if he's driving on the other side of the fence, or he could walk around and look inside if he wanted to without getting inside. I was also wondering if we could have, I don't know if the legalities of approving storage facilities on certain roads, where we have this set up on certain roads, needs to meet council requirements or zoning requirements.
The only way that we could possibly do that is make it an accepted use that the Board of Adjustment would have to approve. Is that correct?
I think if you go back to what Matt was talking about, not really Board of Adjustment. Board of Adjustment is, for variances, there's a hardship, there's some reason you can't adhere to the setback that's required, for example. I think if you want to try to look at the city and say, we want this certain use in this certain area, and here's why, you need to have support for the why. And I think that goes back to what Matt was talking about earlier. Unless he hasn't, he's more of a planner than I am. So from a planning perspective, there might be other ways to get there. He's a lot more of a planner than I am. That would be where I would
Yeah, well, I think it's important to understand that the special exception in different states, handle it differently. So in here, our board of review to give more public process for certain zoning approvals is go through the board of adjustment. Again, I think though once it gets there, they're not going to know what you as a council are thinking. So that may not line up with areas that you think there shouldn't be some type of use. They're going to be looking what's in front of them. I mean, obviously you go talk, but as board, can't tell them what to do. So I think there's a limitation to achieve the end that you're talking about. If you just say, let's make this, an exception, special exception, what you do is get more public input. You're giving it, that use, more of a public hearing for it, but you may not, see the result you think you receive. So to me, if council has an intent, the best way to show that intent is to pass an ordinance that says this is what we believe. This is from a zoning perspective. We're going to create a storage. Speaking this up, a outdoor storage zone overlay district, and we're going to put them in these areas. And part of that work would be developing the rationale why we're picking those areas and not all the areas. Because again, what you got to look at is the potential that you may have to defend it in a court of law. And so
that was my point.
Yeah, you want to have something more than the city manager says that's a good idea. I mean, you want some public input.
Yes, I would say that the one thing you want to avoid when it comes to a possible legal challenge is you don't want whatever board it may go to or whatever decision process that it's going through to be really subjective. The courts want to see for this zoning district, you want to see A, B, C, D. So everyone's on notice of what's being expected. Everyone knows what to look for. So the person, our board, whether it's a city manager, a building official, or a board of adjustment, for example, they have criteria, objective criteria, not just that'll look good there, that won't look good there.
Well, we can have that, but that's the reason I was asking the prejudice and discrimination legalities of the zoning board approving it and then us finalizing it. Lawyers are anxious
your
to jump on that.
Your code needs to have, I would recommend your code have something in writing. If you want to make it some kind of process where they have to meet a certain criteria, the criteria need to be figured
I
out.
think whatever we do, there's going to be gray areas.
Always.
And I don't want to discourage people from doing things, but at the same time, I want our residents to be satisfied with what we allow. It's very difficult to cover gray areas. So the only way I can see to do that is like you have, the ABCs, what we would like, and then it still needs to be approved on certain roads, possibly.
And sometimes,
And that's the D or the E in that.
and sometimes when you have, then the way you have the, for this parcel to have this certain business on it, for example, it needs to meet A, B, C, D. They can meet A, B, C. They can't meet D. There might be a really good reason, and that's where Board of Adjustment can come in. Because they can go to Board of Adjustment and say, here's a reason we didn't cause, maybe the way the lot itself is shaped. That's a very common variance request of the way my lot's shaped. I can't do what you're asking me to do. So they can still work with the city to maybe accomplish what they're trying to without meeting A, B, C, and D. But they've gone through a process. It's an objective criteria process. Everyone has the same ability to do it. And you're not picking and choosing just because you think it might
some of the
look good.
areas that Eric was just showing visually, I don't think we'd have any problem improving something like that. They're not heavily trafficked road. They're back in the middle of nowhere. But to put something like it on another road, we we can't do that. But they can. So that's why we have to have guidelines in there for that, I think.
Well, one thing too, when you talk about 19, the reason you don't have a lot of that now is 19 frontage is probably boat and RV storage is not the highest best use. A retail store or some set. I mean, there's a lot more ways to use because you're paying more for it because it's that frontage.
I'm not worried about a bunch of people putting storage on 19.
Right. So I don't. But again, I always go back to, and I understand residents' point of view. I had the same point of view, but those same residents may want to buy a commercial property to do something with. And the reality is that I don't want to restrict somebody from being able to use their property, whether it's their residential property or their commercial property, unless there's a good reason to do so. And some people may not like boat and RV storages at all. They may want they might want to drive up down 19 and never see one when they go through Port Richey. But the reality is, if you don't want to see boats and RVs, boats specifically, you probably shouldn't drive through Port Richey because it's a boating. I mean, it's what we're here
But
for.
that's why municipalities have codes, so you don't hurt the neighbor's feelings.
Right. Well, but you also, there's
We don't want,
there's a rationale that if you want to control what happens on a particular property, you should own that property. That's kind of the way I look at it. So I'm all about restricting where restricting is necessary. But again, like I pointed out, we allow it. We have allowed it now. We have it. And so if we turn that back, there's property owners. I, for one, speak from because I own a piece of C3 property, and I'm not advocating because it's something I want to do. I'm just using me as a real example. I own a piece of C3. I bought it under the impression I could put storage there. If I want to do that, I'll be able to do it. So what I see is if we flip flop that and we take that out, we've got 8 to 13 people doing it now. There's other people that want to do it, that bought and own that property that was only something they could, and now we're doing a regulatory taking of that by not allowing that anymore. So I
don't think we want to do that.
Right. It's my opinion. I think we need to do this in one way, shape, or another to allow it. And sorry, do you have a question?
I have.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I go first.
Thank
You got to talk much.
The reason this originally came up, if I recall correctly, was we were looking at questioning whether or not we could put moratoriums on many things: smoke vape shops, the gambling things, the outdoor storage. Mike, how many do outdoor storage? I thought it was more than 16. I thought it was like 17 or more outdoor storage areas. Do we presently have in Port Richey, licensed or whatever the term is?
Well, when we drove around and brought the information to you guys at the workshop, I think Veronica and I counted 19.
19.
There's 19
So
actual storage places that are there, or lots that are being used for storage.
Right. So we presently have 19 storage units in 2.7 square miles. And the original intent, I thought, was to decide whether we want to allow more or just leave it at the 19. Not take it away from anybody, but leave it at the 19 and then evaluate that. We only have 3,200 residents, 19 storage units. So to address your thing, I mean, I think there are plenty of storage units within Port Richey that we presently have to address, plus outside of Port Richey, of course.
Notice they're pretty full.
We don't have to, I mean, we have Port Richey, I mean, we have Pasco County too. So, but I just think that was the original intent in bringing this here, was to see, do we want to put a moratorium on them? I think we have plenty for right now, and I think it needs to be looked at.
And the moratorium is temporary. It's not a permanent thing, so it gives you time to try to fix it so it doesn't happen more. So
Yeah, I think it's 6 months, right?
6 months.
There's no dead set time, but
You got to be careful not to go too long.
Yeah, it wasn't too long. Yeah, it
You were
wasn't.
to move as quickly as possible.
Right.
Yes.
Well, here's my concern. After looking at that special exception uses, and this doesn't fall in, this 23 doesn't fall into that. My first thought is, could that be moved down to a special exception use and then have that reviewed by the Board of Adjustment, and then whether they approve or not, is that the final say, or does it come back to the council at that point?
Come back, council.
It does come to council?
If they appeal.
It could.
Yeah, that's an appeal.
It could, okay. So that would be my first thought. That way you accomplish what I was originally looking for, is not having this directly, available, but come through as a special use. The other situation that I see here, that Eric pointed out, was a couple of these things like boat sales and marina establishment. You don't have to have a fence around that. That's going to be a lot of property hanging out. Mobile home sales and a commercial parking lot. Those all kind of fit into the same kind of thing. they would look the same if you're driving by. Any of those businesses, one, they don't have to have fences, and they don't have a fence in the front because they're trying to get business in it. So you're going to have a lot full of gear. But with a warehouse, with a open storage yard, you're making the requirement to enclose it with a 6-foot high fence, and predominantly that stuff sits. But I'm thinking if we're going to do anything, either move it down and make them go through that second hurdle so that somebody can say that, hey, that's a good fit for that particular storage yard. Not that you can't do it, but you need an exception.
Yeah, well, to my point on that, there's a problem with that. First of all, the protective fence around there is just to protect the property inside also. There's storage facilities in Hudson. I walked up and was looking at boats that I thought were for sale, used boats. At a boat at the marina was sold boats, but that part of the marina was owned boats. They weren't for sale. I'm walking all over these people's boats because I thought they were for sale. And I wasn't the only one. Yeah, we have a problem. We got to put a fence around here and block this out because these aren't for sale. So, yeah, you got to have protective. It's to protect the people inside the fence. And if you have empty trailers with no boats on them, as well as boats and motorhomes, well, that's not a marina with boats for sale. Like marinas have a lot of nice, pretty boats out front for sale. That's different than you have all kinds of empty trailers and motorhomes with them. But it's more also just to protect the citizens or the people that have the property inside the fence too. You don't want people to see, well, it's hard to case those properties when you can't see them, right?
Well, does the city, is it the city's role to regulate whether the business has a fence or not? I mean, obviously, if you're a business owner, you probably want a fence around to protect the property that's being stored there.
Right.
But it's not really the city's, necessarily our position to force that to happen, right? Because again, the car lots, they don't have to have fences.
But they're just cars for sale. It's all cars usually.
A commercial parking lot doesn't have to have a fence.
No.
I mean, that's what I say. There's a lot of things that don't have to have a fence.
Right.
It's not, in my opinion,
And
what's
that's why
worth. It's not our role to regulate those type of things.
Walmart regulates people with motorhomes and fifth wheels from parking in their parking lot overnight. Places like that.
Anyway, so any other discussion on this?
If I may clarify, the Board of Adjustment makes a recommendation. The entity, if they disagree with the recommendation, they can appeal to you before it comes to you for final approval. So the process would be Board of Adjustment recommendation to council. Let's say the Board of Adjustment says no. The person applying who disagrees with the no can appeal to you before it comes to you for final determination. So there is an appeal process, but if there is no appeal, it comes to you for final approval.
If I could ask a question on that process as a special exception use, and this, so if we use this now, somebody wants to put a funeral home.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and it goes to Board of Justice, they say no, and they appeal, comes to us, and we agree with that no, and we're picking and choosing. Are we able to do that without? Maybe the argument is, well, we've got these other funeral homes. Why were they able to do it, not me?
In the code, in section 103 for special exceptions, it talks about it goes to the building official before it goes to Board of Adjustment, and there's certain criteria that need to be found by the Board of Adjustment and ultimately the council before a special exception can be approved. So there are criteria in here. It wouldn't just be we think it will look good there.
Yeah, it's a not a subjective. It's an objective.
There's I haven't read them all. I'm sitting here, but there's 18 of them.
Because a subjective determination could be litigated, right?
Yes, I mean this could too. I mean anything can be,
Right.
but if it's subjective, if it's litigated, you're not going to be successful most likely. The court wants to see that everyone was on notice, meaning a reasonable person could pick up our code and go, these are the criteria, and I think I meet those. And if they disagree with us, then they have their opportunity to make that argument.
And I think that objective test within special exception could be, for an example, you can't have one within a certain distance from another.
Well, the criteria are there for all special exceptions. It's not just for one specific special exception.
Oh, they apply to,
It applies to everything.
Okay.
The way it's written right now.
Let me ask another question, because I'm reading down here under number 5, under special exception, talks about light industry, and that's the one area that we do allow open storage. And in that particular section, it says storage. So by default, don't we define it already? In other words, we have that exception already defined in item 5 as a special exception use, storage. And it doesn't delineate between the kinds of storage, but in fact that it's referencing light industry where open storage is already allowed, would it not bring that along for the ride?
But it says within a completely enclosed building. When conducted within a completely enclosed building.
Yeah.
So that's after
Right.
building.
But what I'm saying is light industry is one of the exceptions where open storage is already allowed. Could we bring that open storage into this special exception and just expand the definition on 5 to include open storage?
Storage just said storage.
I know.
Include-
Probably include.
I think if you wanted to put open storage as a special exception, it'd be easier just to make it its own special exception.
Its own number
Yeah,
8.
because I think it's something different.
Number 8.
Yeah,
Okay.
that would be my.
yeah, that's an option.
That's where you wanted to do.
And that way, it would, somebody, for example, and I'm just picking up the spot, the lot on 19, the vacant lot, Eric's lot, the trailer park, somebody would have to come in and run it through Board of Adjustment. They'd have to say, hey, that's a good use. They'd have to make their case. It would be addressed, and that way, there's no more proliferation without going through that second process, which is kind of where I was wanting a safety valve in there, so that hey, we just don't change this, and now you got these things popping up everywhere. Which I think that might be the better route to addressing.
How long is it worth discussing what the special exceptions, the objectivity behind that is? Is it a lot to it?
I think there was 18 of them. I think they're supposed to consider.
I can pull them up. What,
I have them. Adequate ingress and egress may be obtained to and from the property with particular reference to automobile and pedestrian safety and convenience. So some things may not apply. Consistency with the goals, objectives, and policies and adopted comprehensive plan element or portion thereof. Adequate and properly located utilities. Hardship or practical difficulties are unique and singular with regards to their property. So there's a lot of them.
Yeah.
And not all will apply, obviously, depending on what the business is.
But those are the reasons a special exception would be allowed. You'd have to meet some of the criteria, or most of them, or whatever, right?
Yeah.
But it's not a situation where it's impossible.
is it that you have to meet all 18?
Well, not, but they don't apply, obviously.
But if they apply, yes, right.
If they are applicable to what's being requested, you're going to need to meet that condition.
And so how would this work with our existing ones we have now?
We've never had one since I've been here. I don't know if Mike has had a special exception come through since he's been here.
No, I'm talking about the properties that are already doing bonus.
That's great.
Because
if they're already doing it, they're grandfathered into anything.
Well, I guess the question behind that grandfathering is that, is it really grandfathered? Because in Mike's opinion, they should have never been allowed.
Well, my understanding, and I don't want to talk about, we talked about this at P&Z. I don't know any specific property. My understanding is they were either allowed in the sense that the city knew they were there and didn't do anything. So they tacitly allowed
so
them.
So your grandfather
right?
based on that?
Or perhaps at some point someone with the city said, yeah, you can do that. Right. So the city's allowed it. So I don't believe there's any discussion or that I've been asked about going out and cleaning them up and getting them out of here. Okay. So assuming that there's nothing in that third category, assuming that we're going to just say these have occurred in the city, however they've occurred, and they've been allowed to, for whatever reason, if you pass an ordinance that now says they can't do what they're doing, they are grandfathered in. Obviously, if they are damaged to a certain degree and they have to rebuild to be consistent with the new code. If they stop using the business in the way they've been using it for 6 months, they can no longer do it unless they come compliant with code. So there's ways that the grandfathering goes away naturally, but changing code doesn't allow us to go and take away something we've allowed somebody to do.
Yeah, and just as I go through these special exceptions, I don't, nothing stands out that, just because we don't want another one.
I think that the biggest thing would probably be, from what I'm hearing, would be consistency with goals, objectives, and policies of the comprehensive plan. And does having more outdoor storage align with that? That would probably be one of the first things the building official is going to look at.
Yeah.
And I don't know the answer to that. I'm not going to ask him.
Well, again, to remember why this is here. So what this does is provide another round of public input to the decision-making process, because at some point a council decided that these uses, may fit in with that zoning district, but it may not be totally compatible in certain circumstances. So they put them in the special exceptions, and so this goes through additional public scrutiny rather than saying, "Yep, go ahead and do it." I think probably more to the point of what everyone's talking about here. If you go down to like 17, the use as proposed for development will be compatible with the existing or permitted use of adjacent properties and other property within the zoning district. That the property or the proposed use do not constitute a nuisance or hazard because the number of persons who will attend the use or use the facility. So, I mean, there's certain things in there that address kind of surrounding property uses. You can look at it. But again, remember, there isn't anything hard and fast in these that would say you could do it in this part of the city, but not this part of the city, right? I mean, this will be contextual to the area directly surrounding what the proposed use is for that property.
So what I'm hearing, I think there's support here to include it. I think there'd be more comfort level as putting it as a special exception rather as just a primary use. Is that kind of what you guys are thinking too? Is it?
That would be a compromise.
Yeah. Well, so if I could have somebody make a motion to allow it as a special exception use within C3, the only other part of that would the actual language itself. Do we want to continue to leave all these other things in there, the 75 foot and all that, or do we just pull all that out? So that'd be the only thing that question.
What I'd recommend would be moving the special
Recording stopped.
Moving the storage to special exception, open storage to special exception, and then there is some provisions in there that address, junkyards and that kind of thing, and I think we want that because we don't want that occurring, right?
Let me ask,
but the setbacks and things like that, I don't really see where that's warranted at that point.
On the junkyards thing, I wanted to ask a question on that. So, don't we have? I know this is in industrial. We have that provision, but don't we have a general provision that we can't have wrecking yards anyway? Do we need to put that in there or not? I thought we had.
Well, and then what is a wrecking yard? It's not a defined term, so I don't know what it is, right? But I think we're thinking about, where, an auto junkyard where, you have wheels and motors and transmissions and fenders.
Right.
I understand that. I mean, that's my definition, but that's not a definition.
Do you know, Mike, are we Is there a general statement out there
Big
nowhere?
one.
Where?
On Orchid Lake, no one knows about it.
Well, that's not
Yeah,
an
it's,
Mike
I,
has-
I
Mike
don't
has
know
full.
where it is off the top of my head, but there is a provision in there where not to have junk yards, wrecking yards, stuff like that.
So this is redundant.
Is that just in
No,
the
that's
industrial light?
Oh, that's where it is?
I
Okay.
can't remember
That's
if
the only
it's
place
just
it's
in that
coming
part
out.
or if it's in another part as well.
Okay, well then we probably need to leave it in there.
Right.
But we have one in Orchid Lake. It's been there for over 50 years.
Well, that's another issue.
Right.
But is that in our city? Orchid Lake is? No. No. No.
Not an issue.
No.
All right, so you want to craft a motion?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to move this definition of outdoor open storage yard to the special exception uses and include probably most of this information with the exception of the setbacks. I think the wall height and solid fence is probably a good parameter to have in there as well. So if we were to look at this, because none of the other requirements require that, I guess. Although that 25 feet, 75 feet came from the other.
That's from industrial zoning.
Yeah. So maybe we do leave it in there.
Mm-mm.
I think you need to recraft your motion.
Yeah.
I cracked.
It
Yes.
changed a little bit, so
Yes,
I
it
don't know if anyone's
did.
clear on.
You know, because I kind of think and talk at
Yeah.
the same time. You know, I walk to and chew gum.
Yeah. And before we craft it, just understand that whatever restrictions you put in there with the setbacks and fencing or whatever, they don't apply to anything else but the specifically use case.
That's true. So with that in mind, my motion is going to be to move the outdoor storage yard section 23 in its entirety to special exception uses, make it number 8.
Okay. No second?
I'll second that.
Okay. Motion and second. Any further discussion? Will public speak? Actually, before I call you, I got, I don't know if this is you, Janet Applefield. Okay. Yeah. I did have 2 signups and you were on there, so.
My name is Janet Applefield, 8001 Apple 6 Drive. We are considering an outdoor storage unit. We are off Pine Hill, as you were mentioning, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to speak exactly for the items that you wanted to delete because 75 feet right next to us is a nursing home. That would take half of almost 3/4 of our lot to put our RV and boat storage there. So I agree with you. The restrictions should probably be taken out. But now that you've kind of taken my thunder of some of the things that I did want to talk about because you've covered them all, so thank you very much. But my question now becomes, if you move it to special exceptions, it then has to go through Board of Adjustment so that you can get the requirements that you want to have put in there. But how, as the city attorney has said, how do you now get past the subjective part of that to let people still do what they want to do? My understanding also, beside the moratorium, the problem when we first applied for this several months ago, we met with Veronica and with Mike, and we were told that the city planner was denying all of these requests and don't even go there, don't even apply, don't do anything because the city planner is controlling all of the applications. There were about 6 or 7, I think you told us, that had all been, that the city planner was all denying. So again, you get into some person who just makes up whatever rules they want and says, no, sorry, you can't do that because I don't like that idea. So I think you have to be very, very specific. You have to not give someone that authority to just say, okay, I'm going to make that determination and not have specific criteria. I also don't agree with the proposal that's on the table now that includes your yellowed restrictions. I think that will significantly limit people who have areas that might be next to residential that are off 19, that are away from the waterfront as our property is. And so, you know, we would be severely restricted by having those restrictions as well. So I hope you'll reconsider the motion, and hopefully if you are going to move forward with the special exceptions and cause us to have to then, or other residents interested to have to go through the other step of having to go through the Board of Adjustment as well, that's fine. But hopefully it'll be very, very specific as to the things that will be required. Thank you for your time and your
Thank you.
consideration.
Absolutely. Debbie Robinson? Welcome.
Hello, I'm Debbie Robinson, 8001 Apple 6 Drive. I want to thank Robert for saying so much about Apple 6. I appreciate it. And David, when he saw me working over there, and I like John's comments. And Linda, I just wanted to tell you that when we were talking also about, I kind of like felt when they went out to go around with the cities, that they also had like maybe like a properties like what we had, like they had a property, and then they had like land, and the people were just throwing things on the land, and it was not making it look nice. So I don't think like all the places were like a professional storage unit, you know. I think it was a lot of people that had a lot of garbage on there. So, and then when I went to the planning and zoning meeting, I was so like surprised, because I was thinking, okay, now we're gonna clean these places up because they're a mess, you know. And now when I was talking to Nancy and going to the meeting, I found out that we can't clean them up. So I don't think that we could stop other people that really want to make it nice. And I'm going to do just like Robert said. We're going to have a really nice place. We're going to have a nice fence. We're going to have nice, you know, it's going to be very nice, you know, and it's just like my building is going to be nice, and it's a third generation of Port Richey. And so I wanted to go ahead and keep the buffering, which was already there, that 1.7.5 that was already there, take out the additional restrictions. And we also have, like Matthew said, that we have number 17 already in place. And if you decided that you were going to go ahead and do it, that I wanted to get a special exception, because I wanted to show you our property line, and our property line with the nursing home is right here. So if we went into 75 feet, that would be take like our whole land. And so I just wanted to show you, we have an easement here, which is Duke Energy, and we have all the poles that go all the way back. So they have a parking lot, then they have the dumpsters, then they have a small little building, but they put all their junk behind, like mattresses but their building doesn't start until almost 3/4 of our way that we would even want to put a fence. And their building it's like building to building. It's not like a residential. It doesn't have any openings where people can come out. The openings are inside the buildings. So, and it's also, as you can tell, it's almost 75 feet away from their building, from there. So I want to suggest, because we never did finish talking about, are we going to put it on the property line or the business line? So I was just hoping that, I was just going to ask if we could start on the business line. And I really do, I love Port Richey. I love working at the warehouse, and I have small business people, and I try to make sure that when I put people in my unit, that there are small business people like us that live in Port Richey. And about, my sister said about that planning person that lives in Palm Harbor, and you never see her. Who is she? Where does she come to the meetings? And how can she stop us? And that's where it started. So I didn't know if you guys knew that.
All right.
So thank you very much.
Time expired. Thanks.
Thanks, Debbie.
That's all. Sign-ups I had. Anybody else like to speak? Show of hands. Sure.
Brian Smith, 8202 Cornell. Sorry I didn't sign up earlier, but and my head's kind of spinning on the special exception thing, how it works. But the goal of my property is the same as Debbie's saying there. Nice property, going to have at least a 25-foot buffer on Cornell Street, excuse me. But yeah, I'm still kind of confused on how the special exception is going to limit me or not limit me. So pardon me there. So for further explanation, I'd love to have it. But again, top-notch facility, clean, fence, I'm sorry. You were talking about the solid fence earlier. in Pasco County, I believe they have an opaque rule, so 50% opaque. So you mentioned you showed the photo of the one place that had the slats in the fence. I think that qualifies as opaque, more than 50%. So that's something to maybe consider instead of putting a hard restriction for solid wall. And that's also helps with wind as well. You know, if you have, let's just say a chain link fence with the fabric on it that you showed, those things do blow over if the wind's strong. So slats are a little bit nicer, a little bit more expensive. And they would kind of help with the wind resistance as well. But again, you know, I understand, you know, Mike and Tammy's concern. I know she said Palm Harbor, but Safety Harbor is where Tammy resides. But yeah, in my mind, I'm going to make a nice facility here in Port Richey, not a junkyard. And again, help me understand what the special exception means. you know, for me personally, I guess.
Yeah. So a comment? I
So, you need to explain?
Yeah, I just will make sure you get can you pause the timer? Fine.
Yeah.
So a couple things to help, you guys brought the same question up. So going back to your all's question on the restrictions that are in here at 25 feet and 75 feet, that only applies if your particular commercial 3 property abuts a residential property. So if again, this isn't time for dialogue back and forth, I'm just explaining. So if, I don't know what that was it a funeral home she said or something?
District.
A residential district.
Yeah. Assisted living.
What's the difference between that and the residential zone, I guess?
Well, it is, but I mean, you said residential use.
Oh, the actual residential zone, I guess you could be using, that's what you're saying.
Yeah.
So that would only apply if you that. So if it was commercial to commercial, there would be no additional setbacks. So that being said, and then come back to yours. So what the process is you wouldn't be able to just by default have open storage yard. You would have to apply for a special exception use that would go to the Board of Adjustment to opine on, and then they would make a determination based on criteria that's in the code. What's the section on that, Jim?
Section 103.110.
And there's 18 different things in there that they would go down and make sure that by allowing you the special exception, you would have to meet those things that apply. If they determine it is, then they would allow it, and it would come to council then to rubber stamp it. And then if they said no, you could appeal it. It would come to council, and we could overturn it or concur with them. So that's how it's an additional process, additional public hearings to opine on that. So I hope that explains that. And if you need more, obviously more information about that process, Mike would help you through that. Okay. Do you have any more comments? I get minute 35. I'm happy to give you that.
Last little comment I'll say was I like the direction you guys are going, and I'm not gonna fire breathe and yell at you kind of thing, but yeah, we want to be good citizens, and thank you for all your hard work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else like to speak? Seeing hands, I'll bring it back to council for a vote. I don't know if we're going to need a roll call vote here. We'll go ahead and do a regular vote. So all in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Nay? Motion carries. Okay, I'm gonna stop my share here.
There was the motion. That was Dave's motion.
Dave's motion.
But did you the first read?
Yeah, that was the beginning.
We did the beginning.
All good. We said it.
So does that mean it comes back for, if it's
second reading.
modified and then there's
Come back for
another
Second reading.
second
for a
reading,
second
or
reading.
does it come back as a first reading?
Come back
It's going to
second.
come back as a second reading because
Gotcha.
you've moved the location. The substance of what P and Z is already seen is still there.
Gotcha.
So, okay.
We could do another first reading if you want.
Okay. Next up, item number 6, appointment of members to boards and committees. The Planning and Zoning Board. I'll pass it to Mr. Cropper for introduction.
At the July 9th, 2024 City Council meeting, the council appointed Lisa Burke as the new council member to fill the vacated seat. Due to her appointment with the council, Lisa Burke resigned from her seat on the Planning and Zoning Board. Alternate member Michael Faraz, alternate on the PNZ Board, submitted the attached request to be appointed as a full-time member.
I'll open it to motion or discussion.
Motion to approve Michael Faraz to the Planning and Zoning Committee.
Second.
Have a motion second. Further discussion? Any public comment? Two hands will bring it back for a vote. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next up, item number 7, appointment of members, boards, committees, 2125 Coastal Resiliency and Restoration Committee. I'll pass it to Mr. Copper for introduction.
2125 Coastal Resiliency and Restoration Committee currently has 6 members, 1 vacancy. Devin Aaron has submitted his request to be appointed to the committee.
Open up for the motion and discussion.
Who is Devin Aaron?
I'll make a motion to approve that. He owns a 5-star. He's interject young guys right on the ball.
He actually was on before we created this committee, and before Dave was on council. He was on the ad hoc committee that we was kind of meeting with Pasco, talking about dredging stuff. He's like I said, he owns a very knowledgeable guy about marine
business.
water and stuff like that. So I think he make good.
Bob
addition.
would know.
Yeah. So Bob, you got a motion for Devin?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to approve Devin to the board.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Anyone public like to comment? Seeing no hands, I'll bring it back for a vote. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Just so that board is now full, and I believe they've got a meeting scheduled already, correct?
I think we're working to get that date scheduled. We originally had a date, but one of the members that we thought would be very important to be there was not going to be available. So we're working to get new dates for that.
Okay, cool. Next up is item number 8, approval of tentative millage rate for fiscal year 25. I'll pass it to Mr. Coppel.
To comply with the TRIM timetable, and TRIM stands for Truth
In millage.
Truth in Millage, yes. Truth reporting in millage, right? The city of Port Richey must notify the property appraiser of a proposed millage rate within 35 days of certification of the property value. The date of certification was July 1st, 2024. The council may lower the millage rate, but may not increase the rate above the proposed rate. Because of this, it has been the general practice of the council to set the proposed rate 1 mil higher than the prior year's millage rate. The 2023 millage rate was 653, so this would put the 2024 tentative millage rate at 753. Should actually be FY 2025 tentative millage rate at 753. Certification of taxable value, the DR 420 for 2024 lists the current year's gross taxable value for operating purposes at $445,109,362. This is approximately a 10.15% increase from the 2023 final gross taxable value of $404,080,981. Based on the 2024 gross taxable value, our current millage rate of 6.53 would generate total taxes levied of $2,906,558. Each millage would generate revenue of $445,108, and with each mill, $126,240 is required to be paid to the CRA. The 2024 estimated taxable value of the CRA is $281,770,512, a 9.83% increase from 2023. Due to this increase, the city will need to pay about $156,418 more into the CRA, a total of $824,345. Staff is currently looking into other areas within the CRA to be removed. But important. The rolled back rate is a rate that would generate the same amount of property tax revenues for the prior year. When the tax base increases, the rollback rate is less than the prior year's rate. When the tax base decreases, the rollback rate is more than the prior year's rolled up rate. The rolled back millage rate is 6.3782. Taxes levied on the property with a net taxable value of $100,000, $650 at the current millage rate of 6.53, and 6.38 at the rollback rate of 6.372. That I conclude my statement.
Okay, so just to reiterate, and this for you guys that are gals that are new, obviously it's a standard practice that when we pull out the trim, we put the max of 1 mil on there for notification purposes. Obviously, that's not set in stone. We're going to do that. That's what goes out on trim statement. So, obviously, as we go through the budget discussions, finding out what our obligations are and what we have coming in or whatever, we can see what makes sense for the actual millage rate somewhere in this case, 7.53 or less, right? And so, and for the public as well, we're not raising the taxes in this meeting 1 mil. This is just a notification period that we need to put out by state law. And then as we go through the budget process over the next month and a half, we will decide on what the appropriate millage rate be, and then we'll act on that.
If I could, there's really two important things coming from this action, which is basically a motion accepting the maximum tax rate. One is setting what the maximum tax rate could be for the next year. The second is the scheduling of the first public hearing. And we have that date set as September 5th, 2024 at 5 p.m.
I'm sorry, what was that? I couldn't hear with the AC.
September 5th, 2024
And
at
that
5
is
p.m. That is
Thursday.
the first public hearing on the budget.
That's what I didn't hear what it was. Okay, thank you.
And it's a Thursday too, so at 6, I guess, right?
No, it's at 5 p.m. And again, these dates are set by what the code, the law says we have to do it. We have to do it within a certain time frame.
Oh, okay.
So
5 o'clock.
That's why that date, the date is set. The time frame, the time is for us to set. I mean, you could do it at 6 if you want to do it at 6, but we've been.
I think it has to just be after 5. I think the only requirement is it has to be after 5. I'm looking it up.
Yeah, I can't do any earlier than 5.
I'm verifying. We might want to start at 5:01.
Yeah.
To be silly, but it.
Is there any reason why we want to do it at 5 as opposed to 6?
Not for me.
Last year at 5. That's probably why.
Yeah. It gives another hour for obviously folks to get off work, get here, whatever. I mean, I'm okay with 5 as well, but
5 a.m. I'm here.
5 a.m. no, hard no
With
on
your
that.
calculator.
I need a motion for
Motion to set a meeting on September 5th at 5 p.m. to
That's actually
No,
the
it's a motion to
motion
approve.
is just to approve the approach.
Tentative millage rate is 7.5%.
Proposed tentative millage rate is 7.5%.
motion to approve item number 8 to set the approved tentative millage rate for fiscal year 25 equal to 7.53 mils.
motion second. Further discussion? Anyone public like to comment? Two hands, I bring it back for a vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. What is that? Were you just trying to be funny, or?
No, I like to keep it the same.
Well, did you?
This is just setting the
So I tried
tentative
to.
rate.
Yeah, well, just so you know, this is
We'll
not.
do it again?
Yeah, this is not hard set. So
All right.
your no is noted.
Okay.
If we were setting it, I'd be a no as well.
Well, it's a no.
Okay. Item number 9, discussion of old business. Any discussion of old business?
Time out. Before you move on, what about this 9/5 meeting? Does that need to be approved?
It's already scheduled.
I don't have a calendar invite, so that's going to happen.
I will
right?
say that
Yeah.
it has to start after 5 p.m. So the official start time should be 5:01. Some towns do 5:05, 5:15.
Okay, 5:01.
So it's supposed to be at 5.
All right, so that's good.
Any old business?
Old business. I'd like to just ask, is there, city manager, is there any updates on any of this stuff? I know the city paving is complete.
Yeah, I provided any of the updates I had actually. Perfect report.
Yeah.
I'm good.
The only thing I want, if we could take the 100th anniversary off there now, I think that means the schedule for August 5th, so we don't need to track that anymore. That was more or less just to get that committee staffed and that. As an aside, I did happen to notice that it had myself, finance director, and the two we put on there. I thought that I thought the committee was myself and city manager. Did you delegate that to finance director?
I may have.
Okay.
Because I mean, one.
Because I know you delegated the other one, but that one showed. I think you on it.
Well, this one I thought we had as designee as well. I'll go back and check that.
The list that was in the packet for the other appointments, it showed finance director. If I go back to see item number 7.
We always give you a designee.
Yeah, that's
when
what
we. So I'm pretty confident it was an option for you.
But it finance director, which I didn't know if that was by accident or if that was who it was. So we can pull that off, and then obviously the city street paving. I think we can probably pull that off. And
I think you ought to leave them on so you know that they've completed. You know,
well, this is
add a column.
well, no, once they've completed, we don't need to track them anymore.
So then you got the list of what we did this year, what we accomplished.
That doesn't go here. It's another list.
Goes somewhere.
Okay. We don't want this list to continue growing to. We're killing enough trees as it is.
So are you asking us to propose another schedule that shows the ages, the completed activities to another schedule so that we can look at a list of accomplishments?
We've never talked about having an accomplishments list, but I'm sure we can entertain that if you'd like to.
I ran on accomplishing things, so I think I will.
How easy is that to?
I think that's going to be a little bit.
If you look at Ashley's face,
redundant.
that you should keep the list. She's not
I think
The intent was to leave them for this whole business and they would come off on the next one. We just wanted to update you.
Oh, yeah, no, I just make sure that because some of the stuff may stay on there with already action. I just want to make sure we keep the list as concise as possible. I just want to those. I think those are done. There was actually I do have another thing on it. Not skipping over yours, Dave. We come back to that, but on the actual old business. And I mentioned specifically on one of them, I can't remember which it was, when we expect, it was the Grand, US 19 Grand Boulevard intersection, estimated time, 5 to 6 weeks. I wonder if we've got the meeting that, I guess we put it on there, if we could have one more column that has the ETA on it, so that, as we know, we're waiting on that. Going in this meeting, I looked at, I'd have to go back 5, 6 weeks of when that was or whatever. I know you addressed it in your comments that it was probably next week. You guys can hear something like that. But if we could just have an ETA on there that as we're waiting, and we can just kind of go through and see that, okay, that's got some more time to it before we're going to have any kind of update on it. That way we're going to have to go through if it's not too much. But going back to yours, Dave, on the thing, is that something you want to make a motion to do?
I would like to see a list of accomplished or completed activities so that we know that we're making progress every day, right? So I make a motion that as things complete and we complete things, let's keep a list of completed activities.
And possibly an ETA on the
And,
others.
and add the ETA. He had already asked for that.
Yeah. Well, you're making the motion, so I'll second that.
Motion second. You like to
So I
comment?
just want to clarify what you're asking. You're just asking for things that get put on that list to be followed up with, right?
No.
Rolled
to a separate schedule.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just stuff that gets on that list. It's not everything that we do. It's just
No,
this.
just this list.
Okay.
But there's other things that we do that we have said we were going to do or follow up on that needs to be added to this list that's circling the building. You know, like I mentioned to you this morning.
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
And I guess, I mean,
It'll happen.
yeah, not making excuses. I want to clarify the process because I mean, I think, again, for all of our sake, we need to know when something should go on there. Is it just one council member asking about it, or is it council saying we want this on the list to bring it back?
I think it's been that we asked it to be put on there in the past. And so I think what Dave's motion is that as it comes off here, it's just
And
parked somewhere else.
I'm not even worried about coming off of there because you can turn the schedule sideways and do a landscape and you've got enough columns, you can just keep track of it to the end of the year. And then that can age off or whatever. You know, you have everything there, completed and in process.
So how long does the completed stay on the completed list?
Till the end of the year.
Forever?
Just
Like, you know,
No.
in 3042?
Till the end of the fiscal year, and then it
it's on
would
there?
age off and you know, you'd go
When is that? When does it age off?
at the end of the fiscal year.
Be September 30.
Okay, well, that's what I was asking. That's what I was
Fiscal
asking.
year, yeah. That's what I was thinking. And that way you can look back over your activity and say, hey, we accomplished these 10 items, right?
I just think it's lists after list. I think this is good. this was a good input. I just making another list is just more busy work.
Yeah.
Well,
But
people,
I
people that don't plan to fail, and I don't want to be in that category. So I would like to have a list of accomplishments.
You have the motion on the floor.
Yes,
And it's
I'd like-
seconded, so I'm gonna vote on it. Okay, so just to clarify the motion, is it a separate list or stays on this list as completed?
Whatever's easiest for the person doing it. Personally, I think if you keep it
You're
all
making
on
the
one
motion,
page-
so.
Yeah, I'd like to have it all on one page.
Okay, so the motion, to re-clarify motion is by Dave is to not bring the things off of here, but just show them as completed and maybe put them at the bottom or at the top as completed, one or two. And then at the end of fiscal year, all the completed items would roll off.
Do we know how far back we're going? Or is this moving
Current year.
forward?
This start fresh year?
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, so
we got
there
here
was
on
some
this
stuff
list.
that was removed. So you want to go back to the beginning of fiscal year and grab those back in here?
It doesn't matter. I mean, I think the best
You're
way
you're
to
making a motion and I
the
guess
best way to start is just to start. So I say, let's go from this day forward.
Okay.
Let's turn this thing into a landscape file. You want me to get detail? I can get
Well,
detail.
it's-
Landscape file. Let's put filters on there. We'll roll it into a pivot table, and we'll have the data the way we want it.
No pivot table.
Yeah, we're not trying to be difficult. I just want to make sure that the staff needs to know what to do after this motion passes or fails.
Should I send a draft?
Yeah. So obviously September 30th is right around the corner. So start fresh going forward. Now we're going to leave the things that I asked to be taken off. We're going to leave those on, show them as completed. Bob seconded.
So what are we gonna do? Just a completion date at the end of it?
Yes.
If possible.
Yeah.
Or is this something that could just be put as a file on the website?
Well,
As they're completed.
So the motion is to take this old list. Nothing comes off of it. It only shows completed. And at the end of the fiscal year, the completed stuff would fall off. The other stuff would remain.
Well, would you be happy if it was just on the website, a page of completed
Whatever you
projects?
do is
It
probably
used to
not
do
gonna
that.
Make me happy. So really, does it really matter at this point?
Okay, well, I'm going to act on the motion because the motion is to keep it on here, just keep straight. So I'll put that to vote. Before I do that, anybody public like to comment on that? Okay, bring it back for vote. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, anything else? If not, I'm looking for a motion for adjournment.
Well, I had one question. Just a couple things. You have a grant coming up 1st of August, 40 million for the water control station, I believe. Is there
It's
any-
August 8th is when the state is having their meeting, at least that's the last I heard. August 8th is when the DEP is having their meeting that will rank and place the different projects on the list.
This is like a huge deal for us, though. I mean, it's
The
huge.
start to a big deal, yes.
Yeah, and nothing's changed so far. Everything's
Have not heard anything. You know, we have our application in. It's just a matter of waiting for the state to have their meeting.
Just so you understand, this is for the planning stage of it. You know, construction will come later on.
Oh, I
But
understand
this is
that.
for initial planning.
We can't do nothing until we hear from them.
We're trying to see if we're gonna get funding to submit for planning.
Right. Right. Okay.
Okay, any other questions? Nope. Okay, so I got a motion to adjourn from Linda. The second? Second. Lisa got a second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting adjourned.